우리 당과 국가 군대의 최고領導자 김정은 동지께서 대륙간 탄도로켓 화성 14형 시험 발사를 단행할 때 대한 명령하달. 우리 당과 국가 군대의 최고領導자 김정은 동지께서 저체 106 2017년 7월 3일 대륙간 탄도로켓 화성 14형 시험 발사를 단행할 때 대하여 친필 명령하셨습니다. 경의하는 최고領導자 동지의 직접적인 지도 밑에 진행된 대륙간 탄도로켓 화성 14형의 성공적 발사와 관련한 조선민주주의인민공화국 국방과학원 보도가 발표됩니다.
North Korea conducted 2 nuclear tests and 24 ballistic missile tests in 2016 alone, defying 6 UN Security Council resolutions banning any testing. And it has conducted several additional missile tests in 2017, including one that failed when the missile blew up soon after launching. But the secretive country has shown no signs of slowing down, warning that it is ready for full-out war. It has even warned that it would be a piece of cake to nuke Japan and that anyone supporting their detractors would also be in the firing line. The tyrannical country has threatened the US with a full-scale nuclear war and claims the superpower is running scared of Kim Jong-un's missiles. President Trump bolstered American deployment in the region by sending the USS Ronald Reagan and the USS Nimitz to the Sea of Japan. Analysts paint a picture of potential catastrophe. Chemical weapons launched across borders. An artillery bombardment on Seoul. Nuclear strikes on major global cities and the most pressing real-world test for America's missile defense system. Could World War III actually happen? how chemical warfare and nuclear weapons could lead to the apocalypse. The $3 trillion catastrophic cost of a North Korea-US war. If the North Korea war does become a reality, one unmanageable $3 trillion consequence that hasn't been widely acknowledged threatens to wreak havoc on the world. The defiant nation launched another missile test hours after stern warnings from Donald Trump that a major conflict was possible. The conflict between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump could unfold in several ways, but it is the 25 million citizens of the hermit state whose fate could trigger a global catastrophe. A thermonuclear war would be a humanitarian and ecological disaster for the entire region, with radiation causing a nuclear holocaust that tears into South Korea, China, Russia, and Japan. But if conventional weapons are used and the Kim regime collapses, a more likely scenario, we may face an alternative nightmare. The clearest path to North Korean victory in war depends on a quick defeat of South Korean forces, providing the United States and Japan with a fait accompli that Pyongyang will expect Beijing to back. The North Korean attack would likely involve a classic 20th-century combined arms assault, using artillery to disrupt rock defenses and soften up positions as well as create civilian panic, infantry to break holes in the South Korean lines, and mechanized forces to exploit those gaps. The North Koreans could well add special forces, potentially deployed to South Korea before the initiation of hostilities, and regular forces deployed by tunnel to South Korean rear areas. The Korean People's Air Force is ancient, and has received no significant infusion of Russian or Chinese technology in years. The force has very little counter-air capability relative to the Republic of Korea Air Force, and its fighters would find themselves easy prey for well-trained South Korean pilots flying sophisticated aircraft. The KPA can expect very little ground support, either on the tactical or operational scales, and would likely struggle under South Korean air attacks. To remedy these problems, North Korea would likely reserve a large proportion of its land attack cruise missiles and short-range ballistic missiles for attacks on South Korean air bases, in the hopes of destroying fighters on the ground and rendering facilities useless. The first consequence would be that the Kim family and all those connected with the ruling Workers' Party of Korea would have to flee, compatriots angry at years of human rights violations and public executions. Secret police and party officials would seek refuge in neighboring China or Russia, Australian National University researcher Leonid Petrov told News.com. There's no space for the Kim clan in a unified Korea, his brother, cousin, aunts and uncles. They are inseparably connected with the regime and will be prosecuted as criminals. Some South American countries might be willing to give refuge to people. Bolivia, Venezuela, Guatemala and other countries that are anti-American might be supportive. So what will Kim Jong-un's people do without their supreme leader? With a lack of money, food and shelter if the regime collapses. They too may seek refuge in China, Russia, and South Korea. But those countries will not necessarily be open to an influx of North Korean refugees. The next possible outcome may be that since China is already home to an estimated 100,000 North Korean defectors, and is unlikely to want the pressure of more. The Chinese have been concerned about such a scenario for some time, and might reinforce the border with troops, Rand Corporation scientist Andrew Scobell told Foxtrot Alpha. Others may try to travel from city to city in search of refuge, while others could try to cross into South Korea, although if fighting persists in the DMZ, that would be almost impossible. The most likely conclusion would be the reunification of Korea according to Dr. Petrov. The South Korean economy is reaching crisis, he said. It needs to urgently access cheap resource and labor. South Korea might use the opportunity to exploit North Koreans who have less education or experience in enterprise. Millions of North Korean workers could become second-class citizens, there could be widespread discrimination, even the border might be kept for years to stop mass immigration. take at least a decade before the level of prosperity will be equalized between North and South. During that 10 years, the reunification is going to be very expensive, $3 trillion or more. There's going to be definite social tension between South Koreans and North Koreans. Both countries have been isolated from each other, they speak different dialects, understand the world differently. South Korea doesn't need its impoverished, aggressive, poorly educated brothers to inundate South Korea. The final outcome could be the reunification of Korea. South Korea would probably not support America in open military standoff against North Korea, said Dr. Petrov. The America-South Korea alliance will melt away. Economic growth in North Korea means more opportunity for South Korea to access natural resources, cheap labor and transport projects. He said the experience could be a bonanza for both states, as opposed to military action with catastrophic consequences for both. South Korea is due to hold a presidential election on 9th of May. If left-wing Moon Jae-in should win, reunification looks likely and the power of the US will take the hit it dreads.
조선민주주의인민공화국은 핵무기와 함께 세계 그 어느 지역도 타격할 수 있는 최강의 대륙간 탄도로켓을 보유한 당당한 핵강국으로서 미국의 핵전쟁 위협 공간을 근원적으로 종식시키고 조선반도와 지역의 평화와 안정을 믿음직하게 수호해 나갈 것입니다.
평안북도 철산군 소일 위성 발사장에서 운반 로켓 은하 3을 통한 광명성 3호 2호기 위성의 발사가 성공했습니다. 위성은 예정된 궤도에 진입했습니다.